Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're taking a journey through North Carolina, but we are moving way beyond the typical tourist maps, and we're definitely doing more than just looking at spooky ruins. Instead, we're going to uncover the exact historical origins and the profound social significance of 10 forgotten locations across the Tar Heel state. You see, every crumbling wall, every shattered window we're going to look at today, it was originally built for a very specific, absolutely vital reason. To really understand these places, we've grouped them by the human needs they were built to serve. We'll be looking at sanctuaries of health, engines of industry, centers of community, beacons of resilience, and finally, coastal duty and mystery. Let's get into it. Starting off with Section 1, Sanctuaries of Health, treating the most vulnerable. We're going back to a time before modern medicine, looking at massive facilities built as places of immense hope, but also immense struggle.
To put this into perspective, look at the timeline of these origins. Way back in 1856, the Dorothea Psychiatric Hospital opened up in Raleigh. It was actually personally lobbied for by a famous mental health reformer to be a true refuge. Then, fast forward a bit to the early 1900s, and the Blowing Rock Sanitarium opens for TB patients. You have to remember, before antibiotics, tuberculosis, which they called consumption back then, was absolutely devastating. Blowing Rock offered 4,000-foot elevation mountain air as a literal physical cure. But, as medicine advanced, these giant campuses kind of lost their primary purpose, which eventually led to the official closure of the Dix Hospital in 2012, after 156 years of continuous operation.
Now, when urban explorers finally got inside that sprawling 2,000-acre Dix campus after it closed in 2012, this is exactly how they described it: walking through a stopped clock. Literally, imagine an entire medical city just left frozen in time. Abandoned beds that were still made, filing cabinets completely full of records, equipment left sitting exactly where it was on its final day. It's a deeply haunting reminder of the thousands of patients whose lives were anchored to that very land.
And that stark contrast between the original purpose and the present day is perfectly captured by Blowing Rock. Back in the early 1900s, this was a majestic facility, deliberately designed with these long, airy porches, all with the hope of giving consumption patients maybe just one more year of life. Today, it is completely swallowed by the woods. The stone foundations are being quietly reclaimed by the exact same mountain forest that was supposed to provide the cure. It's wild to think about.
Moving right along to Section 2, Engines of Industry. This is all about powering the economy. These places weren't just jobs. They were entire, all-encompassing ways of life.
If we break these industrial hubs down, you realize they were self-contained ecosystems. In 1905, Henry River was established as a strict textile mill and company town, meaning they paid their workers exclusively in company scrip. Then in the early 1900s, you have Biltmore Station, which served as a booming Asheville railroad hub, connecting wealthy tourists and freight right into the mountains. But then there's Judson, also known as Old Fontana. In the mid-1940s, this vibrant farming community was entirely sacrificed. It was flooded by the TVA to build the Fontana Dam specifically for wartime industry.
The trajectory of Henry River is pretty staggering. For decades after 1975, this was a bustling, noisy world full of hard-working mill lives. But after the mill closed in 1977, those identical worker cottages were just left to rot. Ironically, that exact deterioration is what gave it modern fame. It served as the dystopian movie set for District 12 in The Hunger Games.
But the reality of Old Fontana or Judson is just deeply haunting. Its original purpose as a generational farming community was completely erased in the mid-1940s. The government gave residents very minimal notice before flooding the entire valley to power those wartime industries. And the craziest part? Today, it leaves behind ghost town foundations, like chimneys and stone walls, that only mysteriously emerge from Fontana Lake when the waters severely recede during extended droughts. It's like a town trying to breathe again.
Okay, Section 3. Centers of community, faith, and rest. Let's shift gears and look at quieter structures, ones built strictly for local community support and personal sanctuary.
It is so fascinating to contrast two radically different types of Appalachian community buildings. On one hand, you've got the Valle Crucis mission from the 1840s. Its original purpose was an Episcopal mission school. We're talking rugged, hand-built log structures intended for local education and pure mountain self-sufficiency. On the exact opposite end of the spectrum, you have the Glendale Springs Inn, built in the 1890s. This was designed entirely for high society leisure, a summer refuge for wealthy lowlanders, coming up by horse and buggy just to escape the heat.
Now, right down the road from that inn is the Holy Trinity Church. Built in the 1890s to serve the spiritual needs of that tiny mountain community, its evolution perfectly captures how faith spaces can transform over time. In the 1970s, the artist Ben Long added these absolutely stunning, earthy biblical frescoes right under the interior walls. So today, this super rustic 1890s structure quietly houses a world-class masterpiece, just hidden away in the mountains.
Which brings us to Section 4, Beacons of Resilience, Surviving Segregation. This is a story of education, struggle, and incredible historical perseverance that absolutely deserves a lot more of our attention.
We really have to anchor this section on the profound origin of Princeville. Established in 1865, right at the end of the Civil War, Princeville holds the incredible distinction of being the oldest incorporated town in America founded by formerly enslaved African Americans. Think about that. It is a monumental testament to freed people settling beside the Tar River and building a community entirely from the ground up, despite facing immense odds, catastrophic floods, and decades of societal neglect. And standing within that resilient community was the Edgecombe County Training School, which later became known as the Princeville Colored School. This wasn't just a building. Its original purpose was to be a true sanctuary where African American children pursued education despite the incredibly harsh barriers of the segregation era. Seeing its unfunded decay today, well, it isn't just about a building falling down. It really feels like a tragic, slow-motion loss of vital American history. Finally, Section 5, Coastal Duty and Mystery, at the edge of the state. For our last section, we are heading out into the wilderness to explore staggering coastal bravery and a totally inexplicable natural anomaly. If you're familiar with the coast, you know this grim nickname perfectly sets the stage for the treacherous Outer Banks of North Carolina. It's this slender ribbon of barrier islands constantly battered by storms, where literally hundreds of ships have foundered over the centuries, tragically costing thousands of sailors their lives. To combat that intense carnage, the Cape Hatteras Coast Guard Station was built, and the specific origin here is critical. Established in the late 1800s by the United States Life-Saving Service, its original purpose was to be a frontline rescue facility. I really want you to picture this for a second. Ordinary men rowing wooden or powered surfboats into massive, roaring storm seas just to save strangers. It's a staggering level of courage that this now-weathered, abandoned building once housed, long before modern helicopters and Coast Guard cutters took over. Okay, so not all forgotten places are buildings. Deep in Chatham County, there is a perfect 40-foot circle of bare earth that has been documented since the early 1800s, where absolutely nothing grows. No grass, no weeds, nothing at all. Naturally, local legends sprang up, prompting residents to blame Satan's pacing footsteps through the night for keeping the ground completely bare. Getting his steps in, I guess.
Science, of course, has a slightly different take on it. While we can look to things like high salt concentrations or allopathic compounds, which are chemical inhibitors produced by surrounding pine trees, to try and impartially explain the phenomenon, there is a major catch. Science still hasn't figured out why this effect is isolated to this one specific 40-foot circle and not happening in dozens of other identical spots in the exact same forest.
As we wrap up this explainer, we're left with what's perfectly described as the profound silence of places that were once full of voices. What is truly striking about all these locations isn't just the physical decay of the bricks, the stone, or the wood. The real social significance of these structures is the very real people. The mill workers in 1905, the tuberculosis patients in the early 1900s, the brave sailors, and those incredibly resilient students of Princeville who once filled them. The buildings remain as temporary evidence that their lives and their stories actually happened.
History is literally everywhere, right? Especially if you know where to look. We are constantly surrounded by places built for specific purposes that our modern world has simply moved past. So, I'm going to leave you with this final thought and a challenge. Go explore the hidden stories, the old dates, and the forgotten origins that are quietly fading away right in your own backyard. Thanks so much for joining me on this journey today, and I'll see you in the next explainer.